Thanks for coming out to our Thursday lesson, and today we've got a couple of things that we're going to cover. One of the first things that you're going to notice is I'm going to do a couple more drills in these videos than I have been doing before. This is some feedback that I got on one of my videos, and I'm glad to hear this feedback. If you guys want to post that in the comments below or in our private chat, you can discuss things that you'd like to see on our videos or areas where I might be able to improve. For example, Mike gave me the great tip of, instead of standing in the shadows, standing over here in the light so that you can see me a little bit better. So any sort of advice or anything you'd like to see is welcome. And we're going to start off with a moulinette, simple moulinette drill, and then we're also going to discuss Versailles, the video series. It's a Canadian video series. There's not going to be a lot of spoilers. We're going to be mostly discussing the combat that we see in the first season, which is extremely limited. So there's not a whole lot of combat that happens in the first season. You guys aren't going to hear a lot of spoilers, and even if I accidentally drop a spoiler in, whatever, you've had plenty of time to watch the movie. So we're going to start with the moulinette. It's very easy. So all we're going to do is we're going to have our sword fully extended. We're going to be in our second position in our footwork. We're going to have our arm out in a inside guard, and all we're going to do is we're going to cut on just one cut. So the first cut here. So this is cut number one, and all we're doing is bringing it around and around on cut number one. And you want to have a target. In this case, I'm using the lens of my camera, so I'm happy I'm kind of far away. And so you want to be cutting through that target, and you want to be landing on the other side of the target before you turn or shift your blade in any way. So you want to make sure you cut through the target and then you turn the blade so that you're cutting properly. Go nice and slow and just keep it coming around. If your arm starts to get tired and you start to throw really bad cuts, then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to feel why that's happening. What part of your hand is tiring? What part of your arm or your body structure? I've actually just realized a problem that I was having just now, and that is a better way to do things. There we go. So we're going to discuss also how this weighs into the film, to Versailles as well. So here we're going to turn onto the outside, and we're going to cut number two. We're going to bring it to our outside. Okay, so that's all we're going to do is do moulinettes on our cut number two. And we're just going to do about a minute of them, moulinettes on our cut number two. And that's all we're working on right now, just getting that drill done. Now what we're going to do is we're going to change it up. We're going to cut 1, 2, cut 1, 2, just like that. Cut 1, 2, 1, 2. Now if your shoulder starts to get tired, that's perfect. Go. There we go. Now we're going to switch hands, and I'm going to show you that I should have been practicing on my left hand all along, because it's not going to be very good. Now we're going to make the cut number one and try not to hit ourselves in the head with our left hand. If you guys are new and you feel like your cuts are kind of janky and wild and all over the place, then look, so are mine. So don't feel bad. There we go. And we're going to cut to the outside now. Cut to the outside. There we go. Now you don't have to go fast in these particular drills. The key is to make sure your structure is proper and that all your cuts are cutting through on line properly. If you make a mistake and you bring it flat like this or drop your hand or something, don't stop. Just keep going and just fix it as you're going. And build that ability to fix those cuts as you're going. Build the strength in your arm to make both cuts and get all those muscles focused in on doing what they're supposed to be doing. So that's all we're going to be doing. Now this is a little bit more of a workout than you might think. So if you're sitting at home and you're going, well, I can just skip this part. Don't skip this part. Grab your sword or your rolling pin or your, what else is it? Rolling pin or your hammer, whatever else you've got, give it a swing. That was terrible. Oh well, left hand, what can you do? Now we're going to do the upward cuts, so we're going to start on that cut, and that's all we're going to do, is throw that upward cut. Now in our club, I've noticed that our club doesn't throw this cut a whole lot, so getting more comfortable with it, getting to feel like it's excellent and easy to throw, and trying to get that hoop out of there. I got a hoop in it, big. It should come up diagonally and not, you know, you gotta flatten the curve, as they say. So here we go. come in this way. I think that's what they're talking about when they say flatten the curve, right? Everyone's talking about sword fighting. So there we go. There we go on that side. Try and get that in there. And if you guys have tips for my form, I welcome them because I need improvement as well. Rolling pin reminded me of something interesting. Here we go on that side. I'm helping with a translation. Ooh, that was a bad one. I'm helping with a translation of an Arabic treatise. I don't speak fluent Arabic myself, but I am a linguist and I nativize Arabic into English. And so I'm helping with a treatise, and one of the words that we've had trouble with is the word pin, in fact. I don't remember exactly what it is in Arabic, but it translates to pin in English in the same manner that rolling pin does. Because a rolling pin isn't the same as a hairpin. You know? So that confusion exists in Arabic as well, why you call one thing something and not something else. For example, there is a, this is terrible on my left side. There is a belay pin, which is the thing. Why? My left hand is so bad at this. Take it slow, recover it. I've literally never done this with my left hand, I realize. Take it slow, make the cuts proper. This is a good opportunity for you to see learning how to do something new that I've never done before. So, what was I saying? The rolling pin, a belay pin, is on a ship, and it is one of the things that's used to hold the rigging. So the question is this pin that we're translating relating to a large piece of wood that you can clonk somebody with, or is it relating to a small knife? That's the question. So that's sort of the question. This is just awful. So if your cuts are just this bad, don't worry. They could be good. Maybe you're better at something else, like your right hand. Or even more important, maybe you'll get better at those cuts. So there's a good way and a bad way to do cuts. So we've done a little bit of the moulinettes on the right and left, and we talked about some nonsense. Now we're going to talk about the film Versailles. So I'm going to grab my stick. Okay, I got my stick. So I found this stick while I was hiking in the park nearby, and then I made it into a walking stick. So that is the story of this stick. Why do I have it? I have it to demonstrate something to you. So if you were a part of our musket drill, you would have realized, A, that this stick is conveniently very musket-sized, and B, that when you're holding a musket, one of the things we learned last year and that we would be learning in May is that when you're holding a musket and it's on your shoulder like this, you don't look over the top of it like this. So now I'm going to post, hopefully with movie magic that Mike helps us with, I'm going to post an image of Louis XIV in the film looking over the top of his gun as he does. And it is a very cinematic sort of shot view. However, he has a powder pan like right beside his face. So the flintlock comes down, explodes right here. So this is why you don't put your face on top of a musket that has an open powder pan like that. Instead of making your sight over the top, you actually make your sight down the side of it like this. And you turn your head down so that you're looking this way. And so you have a sight that you can see where your gun is pointing, and your face is on the opposite side from where the powder pan is and where this explosion is. So tiny details like that are the reason why you might want a weapons choreographer or a HEMA specialist in a movie. And looking through the cast in that movie, I see they don't have any sort of HEMA specialist. They have stunt coordinators, especially for the horses, which is of course natural. And then they also have some stunt coordinators for the fight scene, but they don't have anyone who specializes in historical reproductions. So this is the tiny details that you might notice if you're someone like me who's very interested in weapons of this time period. And so again, all it is is there's a dude looking over the top of the gun instead of looking down the side of the gun, which is where the period would recommend. So aside from that, I want to say thank you to Maritza for pointing out this movie. It is a fantastic film for us to be watching. The first season doesn't deal with a lot of fighting, but it deals with a lot of politics. And the time period is perfect because it deals with the ascendancy of William of Orange and of King Louis the 14th at the same time. So they're both sort of rising in power at the same time. And you'll note that William of Orange is relates to the Highland broadsword system in that he starts the war against England, in which the Highlanders first appear with using claymores and broadswords and things like that. So that period is early on in the history of the broadsword, but it's spot on. It's exactly the time period that we're dealing with. So we don't see the Highlanders in the film. However, we do see other military sort of setting and context. So you see the correct guns, you see the other swords that other people are using, and you see some of the other tactics. This is where hopefully I'll be able to post another image for you guys. I have no idea how to rip off the movie and post a live shot, which I would love to do if someone could explain to me how to do that. Then I can post like a scene for you guys. But there's another scene where Rohan is teaching the Dauphin horseback riding. So he takes him out in the woods and he's just teaching him to ride.
Position, 1, 2, 3. God!
You're dead, sir!
Mercy, my lord, mercy!
Now, another point that is key at this juncture is that he goes around with a stick, the Dauphin, the son of Louis XIV. He goes around with a stick in the woods and he's hunting Rohan. Now, if they're depicting a hunt, they're doing it incorrectly because they should be mounted. And if they're depicting other military action, it's very unlikely that a French noble at this time would be instructing the young king on that sort of fighting. That was very particular to the Americas and the 7 Years' War and in those combat contexts. Continental fighting at the time was very much still the rank and file. So instructing somebody in sort of rangery would be very unusual, especially for a noble like Rohan who doesn't necessarily demonstrate any familiarity with North America or with other alternative fighting styles. So it would be very unusual for him to be teaching the Dauphin how to be a ranger. And so he wouldn't be sitting in the crook of a tree hunting people like a bandit. That seems untoward. And that's one of the reasons why the Haudenosaunee had a relatively easy time in fighting some of the European forces early on in North America, because they knew the terrain and they knew how to use it to their advantage, and they were natural rangers. And so when the French and the British and the Dutch arrived in North America to fight in their rank and file, they fell into disarray because they continued to look down upon rangery as banditry and as a lower form of fighting. So even to the detriment of their military forces in North America, they would sometimes retain the rank and file, and they would leave the indigenous people to be continuing this ranger action. It wasn't until a little later that some of the rangers first appeared early, just before the American Revolution. You started seeing ranger units in North America, and then they were adopted into the American Army and the British Army at that time. So it was around this period that rangers became, that rangers were fielded, but I would be highly suspect of an upper old stock French noble in France teaching the king's son how to be a ranger. Doesn't really fit. So that's the last thing about Rohan's instruction of Le Dauphin. And I'm going to put my stick away. Just as we move into the last point, which is going to be staying inside the box, I also wanted to mention that the Highlanders specifically, as well as many Irish fighters, were also well known for being Rangers historically. But again, those units, if they were even composed into units, those units were not the sort of upper class elite forces that we might consider them today. It was more the idea of getting a bunch of bandits into your army to counter your other bandits. So I stand by the idea that a French noble would not be teaching the king's son. But I am open to correction, and I would welcome anyone with a rebuttal. So the other thing that we're going to touch on is the other combat that takes place in the first season between some unidentified individuals with an unidentified outcome. For your spoiler alerts, it's a knife fight. So the only other fight that happens in the first season, aside from a little bit of gunnery, is also a knife fight. And the critique I have on that is, it's not really a critique. We humanists need to understand the need in cinema to clear the angle. So now, better than ever, hopefully, many of us are learning about this because now we have to present all our stuff on YouTube. So you understand that by doing this all the time, it becomes difficult to see what I'm doing. And by taking proper angles of attack, it can be very hard to see me, which is the point, especially if I'm here. So it becomes hard to see what I'm doing and who I am even. If I have my sword raised into a, for example, a Spadroon guard here, now you've completely lost me. So just like in space movies where they have all those wide open-faced helmets, or in movies where they're under the water and they have those big open-faced helmets that are somehow face-lit instead of, you know, light out. Why do they have a light on the inside to shine on your face? Well, it's for the movie, it's so you can see the dude. So similarly, the one critique I have about the knife fight is it's very much this way. All of the knife fighting happens like this. Everyone's got a knife, and he's got it here, and then he comes over here, and then he blocks the guy, and he pulls him up here, and then he tries to stab him like this. But as you can see, with the light shining on my face, with the camera in the angle that it's at, with my arms out, you can see me, and you can see who's doing the fighting, and you can see the action that I'm taking. Now, if instead I were to take subtle actions like this, and figure out who's fighting who, and where we're getting in like this, it's very hard to get the camera. If you do a close angle on that, it's very hard to see what I'm doing, because I'm just shifting like this, and that's all I'm doing. Now, our friends, especially our Fiore friends, are going to know that the vast majority of the fight is won in a matter of inches, right? You move in here, you block the arm off, and you turn this way, and that's all you need to block your face or to lock somebody's arm. And all you need is that turn from here to here. So why would you do this? And it's just for cinema. So, that said, if you're not fighting for cinema, keep your sword inside the box. So we're going to do a couple of moulinettes again. And as we do them, we're going to think about and we're going to focus on the hand not wandering. Okay? So this is the thing that we're trying to avoid. This is the movie cut. Right? And you'll see it in film as well. Someone will bring their hand over here and they'll strike high like this. Or they'll block out here with their hand like that. So this again opens my view so that you guys can see me, which is great. But in fact, in sword fighting, we want to close it, the opposite. So we want to make it hard for you to cut into my box. So the box goes from my shoulder. Maybe Mike can make a graphic of the box, that'd be rad. If you drop down here, out to the front, to my fullest extent out front, goes back up and comes back over here. And generally speaking, you want to keep the handle of your broadsword in there. And generally speaking, if your handle is back, it's going to be within the box, and you're not going to be guarding the box very well. See how far my elbow is out? If your hand is forward, now you're guarding the whole box all at once. Okay, so this is why we want to keep our hand forward when we're making our cuts, and we don't want to turn our hand outside the box when we're rotating. So we want to try to rotate on point as much as possible, keep that handle inside the box when we're making these cuts with our moulinettes. So I want you guys to go through all the cuts and focus on that, and focus on keeping your hand inside as much as possible and keeping it forward. Because again, if your sword is here, you're not as well guarded, even if you're, say, guarding your outside or you're guarding your inside, that's fine, but it leaves a lot to be desired. If you simply move your sword forward, you see now you're guarding very easily more of your body. So it's a forced perspective that I'm putting on the camera, but it still works because the rays of light are the same as the rays of a sword. So if you are blocked close to the camera, it's easy for me to slip over top at an angle and hit. If you're blocked farther from the camera, you see that angle shifts, and now the sword can't hit you anymore, even if it's aiming towards you, it goes over top. Okay, so that's the principle of keeping your hands in line when you're making cuts, and this applies equally to sword fighting as it does to knife fighting, and I will demonstrate that same principle. So when you're knife fighting, if you make a big sweep out here, it's hard to defend that arm, which can easily get cut as it's coming in. If you're knife fighting from here and you come straight through the inside, it's much easier to get that in to where it's supposed to be going. So you won't see quite as often these sorts of cuts that you see in the film. But do watch the movie and check out that scene. The beautiful thing about that scene is there are a number of plays that come straight out of Fiore, so I highly recommend watching that whole series, and then I'll catch you guys up on the second season and we'll discuss the sword fighting that happens there. See you then.